The stranger at his fence said she was looking for a man with a good heart, her eyes carrying both challenge and plea. And as he listened, one question lingered: was she searching for someone she'd never met, or had she just found him? The morning sun was just cresting the mesa when I heard the horses snorting, restless in a way that meant company was coming. Out here in Copper Hollow, New Mexico territory, visitors were about as common as snow in July, and usually brought trouble with them. I was mending the north fence line when I saw her, a lone figure standing by the wooden rails, hands clasped on the top post, like she was holding onto something more than just weathered pine. She wasn't what you'd call beautiful in the way men usually notice, but there was something about her that made you look twice. Maybe it was the way she carried herself, straight-backed despite the dust coating her travel-worn dress, or the quiet dignity in how she waited, not calling out or demanding attention. "Morning," I said, setting down my hammer and walking over, keeping my distance. 20 years of ranching in this remote corner of nowhere had taught me that strangers rarely brought good news. "Mr. Hayes?" Her voice was soft but steady, with just a hint of something desperation, maybe, carefully hidden beneath good manners. "I was told you're a man with a good heart. I need your help." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Nobody had called me that in a long time. Not since Sarah died 3 years back, taking with her any reason I had to be anything other than what I'd become: a man who kept to himself, worked his land, and didn't ask questions about tomorrow. "Depends on what kind of help you're needing," I replied, studying her face. She had green eyes that had seen too much, and worry lines around them that seemed too deep for someone who couldn't be much past 30. "And who told you that about me?" She glanced over her shoulder toward the road, a quick, nervous movement that told me she wasn't just making conversation. "Mrs. Henderson at the mercantile in town. She said you don't turn away the undeserving." "That's a mighty specific recommendation," I said, hooking my thumbs in my belt. "You want to tell me what you're running from? Or are we going to dance around it all morning?" For the first time, she almost smiled. "Almost. I'd rather know if I can trust you first, Mr. Hayes. Some things are better said when a person's sure they won't be turned away." "What do you think she's hiding?" Drop your theories in the comments below. I have a feeling you won't see this one coming. I looked at this woman, Marin Calloway. She'd introduced herself as, and felt something stir in my chest that I'd thought was buried with Sarah. Maybe it was the way she stood there, proud despite whatever had driven her to my fence. Or maybe it was just that I recognized the look of someone carrying more weight than they should have to bear alone. "Well then," I said, "I reckon we better start somewhere." "I left my last place in a hurry," Marin said, her fingers worrying the top rail of the fence. "I had to leave most everything behind, except what I could carry." She wasn't giving me much to work with, but the way she kept scanning the tree line told me more than her words did. Whatever she was running from, it wasn't just poverty or heartbreak, it was something with teeth. "You travel far?" I asked, walking to the pump to fill a tin cup with water. Basic hospitality, something Sarah had drilled into me during our too-short marriage. "Far enough." She accepted the cup gratefully, and I noticed her hands were steady despite everything. 3 days of hard riding, sleeping rough. Haven't had a proper meal since I left Colorado. Colorado. That was near 400 miles north, depending on where exactly she'd started from. A woman traveling alone across that kind of country wasn't just brave, she was desperate. "Much obliged," she said, handing back the empty cup. "I don't mean to impose, Mr. Hayes. I just needed to know if what Mrs. Henderson said about you was true." Before I could ask what exactly the old busybody had told her, the sound of hoofbeats echoed across the valley, distant but getting closer. Marin went rigid, her knuckles white, where they gripped the fence post. "Friends of yours?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from the way she'd gone pale. "No," she whispered. "No friends." The riders passed by without stopping, but not before I caught sight of them through the cottonwoods, 2 men in dark hats, moving with the kind of purpose that usually meant business of the unpleasant variety. They were scanning the countryside like they were hunting something or someone. "They looking for you?" I asked, when the sound faded. Marin's laugh was bitter as alkali water. "Among others, Mr. Hayes, I know I'm asking a lot, but could I come into your yard? Just for a few minutes? I promise I'm not looking to cause trouble." I studied her face, seeing the fear she was trying so hard to hide. Whatever she was mixed up in, she wasn't the cause of it, that much I could tell. And despite my better judgment, I found myself nodding. "You can come up to the house," I said. "But understand, Miss Calloway, this is my land, and I protect what's mine. You bring trouble here, it becomes my trouble." "I understand," she said, relief flooding her voice. "And Mr. Hayes, thank you." As we walked toward the house, I noticed she never once stopped watching the road. The coffee was strong and black, the way I'd learned to make it during my years working cattle drives before I settled here. Marin sat at my kitchen table, warming her hands around the cup, her eyes taking in the photographs on the walls, mostly pictures of Sarah, a few of the ranch in better days. "Your wife?" she asked, nodding toward a photo of Sarah laughing beside our old mare. "Was," I said. 3 years now." "I'm sorry." She meant it. I could hear it in her voice. "She looks like she was happy." She was. I sat across from her, noting how she positioned herself to keep an eye on both the front window and the back door. "Your turn. You said you were married once." Marin's fingers tightened around the cup. "Thomas Calloway. He owned a freight business in Denver, legitimate and profitable. When he died last year, his business partner claimed debts that didn't exist, liens that were never filed. Suddenly, everything Thomas built belonged to someone else. And you fought it." "I tried." Her voice was steady, but I could see the pain underneath. "Had lawyers, filed papers, even took it to the territorial judge. But Marcus Donovan, Thomas's partner, he had money, influence, and friends in all the right places." Outside, another set of hoofbeats passed by, slower this time. Marin's entire body went tense until the sound faded. "There's more," I said. It wasn't a question. She nodded. "When the legal route failed, I started asking questions about how Donovan had acquired so much wealth so quickly. Turns out he'd been skimming from the business for years, using Thomas's good name to cover illegal freight, runs guns to Indian tribes, whiskey to reservations, things that could get a man hanged. And Donovan found out you knew. He made me an offer," she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Marry him, keep quiet about what I'd discovered, and I could keep a small portion of what had been mine. Refuse, and I'd have an accident." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "So you ran." 3 nights ago, his men came to the boarding house where I was staying. If it hadn't been for a sympathetic widow who warned me," she didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. "This widow, she's the one who told you about me? Mrs. Henderson's sister. Said there was a man in Copper Hollow who didn't turn away folks in genuine need, who'd once stood up to claim jumpers, trying to steal a neighbor's land." Marin looked directly at me for the first time since she'd started talking. "Said you were a man with a good heart." I sat back in my chair, understanding now why she'd seemed so careful with her words, so hesitant to trust. "And now you're here, hoping I'm fool enough to take on your troubles." To my surprise, she smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her. "I'm hoping you're good enough to help someone who's got nowhere else to turn." By midday, I'd made my decision, though I kept it to myself while I watched the ridgeline. Sure enough, around noon, 2 riders appeared on the distant mesa, sitting on their horses like they had all the time in the world to study my ranch. Marin was in the kitchen, washing our coffee cups with the careful attention of someone who'd learned not to take simple comforts for granted. I didn't tell her about the watchers, not yet, but when I saw her stiffen at the window, I knew she'd spotted them too. "How many?" she asked without turning around. 2. Same ones from this morning, I'd guess. She set down the cup with shaking hands. They're Donovan's men. He'll have sent more than two, but they're smart enough to scout first. I moved to the window, studying the distant figures. They were too far away to make out details, but their posture spoke of men comfortable with violence, patient as buzzards waiting for something to die. Miss Calloway, I said, I need you to tell me exactly what you're worth to these men. Dead or alive? She turned then, her face pale but her voice steady. Donovan wants me back alive if possible. I'm the only witness to his illegal activities, and a dead woman's testimony from beyond the grave might cause questions he doesn't want asked. But if he can't have me back to silence me, she shrugged. Dead works too. I'd been weighing my options since she'd first told me her story. Turn her away and live with myself, or help her and make enemies I didn't need. It should have been an easy choice for a man who'd spent 3 years avoiding complications. But looking at her now, this woman who'd lost everything and still had the courage to keep fighting, I thought about Sarah, about what she'd say if she knew I'd turned away someone who needed help. Well then, I said, moving away from the window, I guess you'd better plan on staying. The relief that flooded her face was enough to answer any doubts I might have had. Mr. Hayes, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I interrupted. I'm offering. Those men want to find you. They'll have to go through me first. For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, she whispered, Thank you. Outside, the riders had vanished from the ridge, but I knew they'd be back. Men like that always came back, and next time they wouldn't be content just to watch. I walked to the gun cabinet and checked my rifle, making sure it was loaded. Marin watched me with wide eyes. You think they'll come tonight? I think they'll come when they're ready, I said. And we'd better be ready too. Over the next 3 days, Marin proved she was more than just another mouth to feed. She could really ride, not just sit in a saddle, and she wasn't afraid of honest work. We spent the mornings mending fence lines, and the afternoons moving cattle to better pastures, working together with the easy rhythm of people who understood the value of silence. She had good hands with the animals, gentle but firm, and she didn't complain when the work was hard or the sun was hot. More than once, I caught myself appreciating the sound of her laughter when one of the younger calves did something particularly stubborn. You've done this before, I observed, as we fixed a broken gate hinge. Thomas taught me, she said, holding the gate steady while I worked. Said a woman who understood cattle was worth her weight in gold. Her smile was sad but genuine. He was a good man, Mr. Hayes. He deserved better than what happened. Most good people do, I replied, thinking of Sarah. But the peaceful moments were offset by growing signs that we were being watched. Fresh hoofprints appeared near the south pasture, where none of my horses had been. A gate that I'd left closed was found hanging open. Small things, but enough to keep us both on edge. The third night, I was checking the barn before bed when I saw it a faint glow moving near the chicken coop. Too steady to be a firefly, too deliberate to be coincidence. I slipped back to the house and collected my shotgun, then made my way toward the light, keeping to the shadows. The intruder was a thin man in a dark coat, holding a bull's eye lantern, and examining the ground like he was reading tracks. That's far enough, I said, stepping into the open with the shotgun leveled at his chest. He straightened slowly, hands moving carefully away from his body. In the lantern light, I could see a face that had seen too much of the wrong side of life, scarred, weathered, with eyes like chips of flint. Easy, friend, he said, his voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. Just looking for someone who might have passed this way. A woman, traveling alone, worth good money to the right people. Don't know anyone like that, I lied smoothly. And you're trespassing. He smiled, showing teeth that had seen better days. Marcus Donovan's a generous man to those who help him find what he's looking for. $500 for information. $1,000 for delivery. Not interested. Your choice, he said, setting down the lantern. But you should know there's more of us out there. Marin Calloway's got nowhere to run, and sooner or later, we'll find her. The question is whether you want to be standing in the way when we do. I kept the shotgun trained on him as he backed toward his horse. The question is whether you want to be buried on my land or somewhere else. He mounted up, still smiling that unpleasant smile. Think about it, friend. That woman's brought nothing but trouble everywhere she's been. How long before she brings it to you? After he rode away, I found Marin waiting on the porch, her face pale in the moonlight. How much did you hear? I asked. Enough. She looked toward the darkness where the man had disappeared. He's right, you know. I am bringing trouble to your door. Maybe, I said. But it's my door, and my choice who's welcome behind it. The next morning brought clarity in the form of fresh tracks, not just one horse this time, but 3, circling the ranch like wolves, testing the defenses of a sheepfold. I showed them to Marin over coffee, watching her face grow more troubled with each hoofprint. They're getting bolder, she said. That means Donovan's getting impatient. How many men does he usually travel with? Half a dozen, maybe more. He's got enough money to hire all the guns he needs. She set down her cup with hands that weren't quite steady. Mr. Hayes, I should leave. Tonight, before this gets any worse. Where would you go? I asked. You said to yourself, you've got nowhere left to run. I'll figure something out. I won't have your death on my conscience. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. You know what my Sarah used to say? She'd say a good heart doesn't mean walking away when things get hard. It means standing your ground when standing is the right thing to do. This isn't your fight. The hell it isn't. The words came out harder than I'd intended, but I meant every one of them. The moment you asked for help, the moment I said yes, it became my fight. I don't back down from bullies, Miss Calloway, whether they're claim jumpers or hired guns. For the rest of the day, we prepared. I showed Marin how to load and fire my spare rifle, grateful that she already knew which end the bullets came out of. We secured the livestock in the barn, where they'd be safer, and I positioned extra ammunition in strategic places around the house. You've done this before, Marin observed as I checked the windows for clear lines of sight. Different enemy, same principle, I said. Apache raiders? Back when I first settled here, man learns to protect what's his, or he doesn't keep it long. As the sun set, we took positions, me at the front window, Marin watching the back. The waiting was the hardest part, listening to every sound in the darkness, wondering if each creak of settling wood or rustle of wind through the cottonwoods might signal the beginning of something we might not survive. Mr. Hayes? Marin's voice was soft in the darkness. Yeah? Whatever happens tonight, I want you to know I never expected kindness from a stranger. The world doesn't have much of it anymore. Maybe that's why it's worth protecting when you find it, I replied. Around midnight, I saw the first shadow moving near the barn, then another, by the chicken coop. They were coming, just as we'd known they would, with the confidence of men who'd done this kind of work before. I checked my rifle one more time and settled in to wait. Some fights come to you whether you want them or not. The measure of a man isn't whether he faces them, it's how he stands when the fighting starts. Tonight, I intended to stand tall. Dawn came with the sound of horses, not the careful approach of scouts this time, but the deliberate advance of men who'd finished with subtlety. I counted 3 riders as they approached the fence line, moving with the easy confidence of people accustomed to getting their way through intimidation. The leader was a big man with silver hair and a mustache that had probably been fashionable 20 years ago. He sat on his horse like he owned everything he could see, which, given what Marin had told me about Marcus Donovan, might not be far from the truth. That's him, Marin whispered from beside me at the window. That's Donovan. The other 2 were clearly hired, muscle-lean, hard men, with the kind of faces that made children cross to the other side of the street. They flanked Donovan like hunting dogs waiting for the word to attack. I stepped out onto the porch, shotgun cradled in my arms but not quite pointed at anyone yet. Marin followed, staying close enough that I could feel her presence, but far enough back that she wouldn't be an easy target. "Mr. Hayes, I presume," Donovan called out, his voice carrying the polished tones of a man used to boardrooms and political dinners. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "I don't believe we've been introduced," I replied, "and I generally don't discuss business with uninvited guests." Donovan's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Marcus Donovan, Denver Freight and Mining Consortium. And the lady behind you is my late partner's widow, who's been causing considerable trouble with her wild accusations and theft of company property." "Theft?" Marin stepped forward, anger overriding caution. "You stole everything Thomas built, murdered him when he got too close to the truth about your illegal operations, and now you want to—" "Careful, my dear," Donovan interrupted, his voice suddenly cold as winter wind. "Slander is a serious charge, and you're standing on the property of a man who has no idea what he's gotten himself into." I shifted the shotgun slightly, not quite aiming but making my intentions clear. "Seems to me the lady has made her position clear. She doesn't want to go with you." One of Donovan's men laughed an ugly sound. "And what's one broken-down cowboy going to do about it? You're outnumbered, old man, and outgunned." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm on my own land, protecting someone who asked for my help. That tends to improve a man's odds considerably." Donovan leaned forward in his saddle, studying me with the calculating gaze of a predator sizing up potential prey. $5,000, Mr. Hayes. Cash money. For the woman and your silence about this unfortunate misunderstanding. Enough to buy better cattle, improve your ranch, maybe even find yourself a new wife." "Not interested." "10,000. Still not interested." The friendly mask finally slipped from Donovan's face, revealing something cold and vicious underneath. "Then you're a fool, cowboy. There are 3 of us and 1 of you. Mathematics isn't in your favor." "Depends on how you do the math," I replied, and triggered both barrels of the shotgun into the ground directly in front of Donovan's horse. The animal reared, nearly unseating its rider, while the thunderous blast echoed across the valley. When the echoes faded, I had the gun broken open and was calmly reloading, my movements deliberate and unhurried. "Next time I won't aim at the dirt," I said conversationally. "I suggest you gentlemen ride on back where you came from." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Donovan regained control of his horse and his composure, though I could see the rage burning in his eyes. "This isn't over, Hayes," he said. "Not by a long shot." "I expect not," I agreed. "But it's over for today." They wheeled their horses and rode away, but not before Donovan called back. "We'll be seeing you again real soon, cowboy. You and the lady both." As the dust settled, Marin let out a breath I didn't know she'd been holding. "You just made a very dangerous enemy," she said. "I've had dangerous enemies before," I replied, watching the riders disappear into the distance. "Question is whether they'll be back today or tomorrow." "What do we do now?" I looked at her, this woman who'd brought trouble to my door, but also brought something else, something I'd thought was gone forever. Purpose. A reason to fight for something more than just getting through another day. "Now we get ready for round 2, I said. 3 days passed without any sign of Donovan or his men, and I began to hope that maybe, just maybe, our little display of defiance had been enough to convince them to look for easier prey elsewhere. It wouldn't have been the first time a bully backed down when faced with someone willing to fight back. Marin seemed to be thinking the same thing as we worked together in the morning sun, moving the cattle to fresh pasture. She'd settled into the rhythm of ranch life like she'd been born to it, and I found myself looking forward to her quiet presence at the breakfast table, the sound of her humming while she tended the garden Sarah had planted. "You think they're really gone?" she asked, as we paused to rest the horses by Miller's Creek. "Maybe," I said, though something in my gut told me it wasn't that simple. Men like Donovan didn't give up easily, especially when their reputation was at stake. Or maybe they're just regrouping, waiting for us to let our guard down. She nodded, understanding. Either way, I can't stay here forever. You've done more than enough. More than anyone had a right to expect. Where would you go? I asked the same question I'd posed days ago, but with different weight behind it now. I don't know, she admitted. California? Maybe. Mexico. Somewhere far enough away that Marcus Donovan's reach can't find me. The thought of her leaving hit me harder than I'd expected. Over the past week, I'd grown accustomed to having someone to talk to, someone who understood that silence could be companionable rather than lonely. The house would feel empty without her laughter, the work harder without her capable hands. You could stay, I said, surprising myself with the words, if you wanted to. She looked at me with those green eyes that had seen too much pain, hope and fear warring in her expression. Mr. Hayes Colter, you don't know what you're saying. I'm damaged goods, a woman with a dangerous past and no future worth speaking of. Seems to me, you're a woman who survived more than most and kept her dignity while doing it, I replied. Seems to me, you're exactly the kind of person this place needs. We worked in comfortable silence for the rest of the morning, but I could feel something shifting between us, a conversation happening without words. When we returned to the house for lunch, Marin seemed more settled, more at peace than I'd seen her since that first day at the fence. That evening, as the sun painted the mesa in shades of gold and crimson, we found ourselves back where it all started, standing by the fence line where she'd first asked for help. I came here looking for a man with a good heart, she said quietly, her hand resting on the same post she'd gripped that first morning. I thought if I could find someone decent, someone willing to help, maybe I could figure out what to do next. And now? I asked. She turned to face me, and in her smile, I saw something I'd thought I'd never see again. The possibility of happiness, of a future that held more than just getting through each day. Now I think I found something better than help, she said. I think I found a home. I reached out and covered her hand with mine, feeling the calluses from honest work, the strength in her fingers. Then I guess you'd better stay and help me figure out how to make it work. As the stars came out overhead, we stood together in the gathering darkness, two broken people who'd found a way to be whole. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, and maybe Donovan would find the courage to come back for another try. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't standing alone. If you thought this story was something special, you won't want to miss what happens in this next video. Hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you thought of Colter and Marin's story.